But disease control rate tells you the efficacy of the triple combination. And what's particularly exciting with all our data is we're doing much better than the double checkpoint alone. Okay.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Scancell Chief Executive and Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Lindy Durrant. Lindy, very good to speak with you. You've announced further positive data from the SCOPE trial. Please could you give us an overview on the trial and the positive data in cohort 1 with SCIB1 for advanced melanoma?
Yeah, certainly. We're very excited to present this new data. It's on SCIB1 in the cohort 1, and it's in combination with the double checkpoints ipilimumab and nivolumab, basically. And what we're saying today is we have an 84% disease control rate. So that means 84% of the patients have either had stable disease or indeed their tumour has regressed. And indeed, if you look a little harder, 72% their tumours have regressed, so their tumours have got smaller on this combination therapy. And indeed, 20% of them have completely cleared all of their tumour, which is incredibly exciting. But probably a little bit more even exciting than that is the progression-free survival. So what we mean by that is how durable some of those responses are, how stable, how long do they last? Because it's very nice to see your tumour shrink, but then, if a week later it grows back again, that's quite disappointing. But what we're actually seeing here is once we get control of the tumour, we seem to maintain control. So we're looking at an 80% progression-free survival in those patients at 6 months. So basically, once the tumour goes, it goes and it remains very small, which is absolutely excellent.
Why is progression-free survival so important?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's important really for two reasons. One, as I've already said, because it's predicting, how long that response is going to last and what's the ultimate long-term benefit to the patient. But it's secondly very important because that will be the endpoint for the registration study. So the next stage from this is a phase 2, phase 3 registration study. And what we'll look at there is at 18 months, what's the progression-free survival? And the reason they use progression-free survival is we will ultimately have to look for overall survival. But in immunotherapy trials, progression-free survival is a really good predictor of overall survival. So in other words, if you're getting good, durable tumor control, you're going to live longer, which is obviously what we're trying to achieve for these cancer patients.
Lindy, why is disease control rate so important?
The disease control rate is important because it basically has everybody who has any benefit. Okay? So you can have benefit, as I said, in two ways. You can either have stable disease, which means your tumour stops growing. It just stays where it is. And therefore, when you're not progressing, you're not getting any more symptoms, you're not getting any worse. In essence, that's a good thing. But even better, as I've said, is if your tumour starts going away, clearly even better if it completely disappears. But disease control rate tells you the efficacy of the triple combination. And what's particularly exciting with all our data is we're doing much better than the double checkpoint alone. Okay, so if you look at the progression-free survival, the overall survival, complete all better than just the double checkpoint. And when you bear in mind that probably about 5 years ago, before the double checkpoints really took off, advanced melanoma was a death sentence for everybody. If you can say we're now showing benefit to these very advanced patients in 84% of patients, that's really a massive step forward and incredibly exciting for that cohort of patients.
An objective response rate of 72% is quite impressive. However, it's lower than the 85% announced in November last year. What's the reason for the decrease?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's just we've got a wider scope of patients. So there are certainly some of patients in the more recent numbers that have progressed before 13 weeks. So one of the criteria of our study is you have to have 3 vaccinations. You have to really be on study for at least 13 weeks to get any benefit from the vaccine or indeed from the double checkpoints. Okay. Now, the clinicians try to predict that, but it's not always that easy to see. Whereas a couple of our patients have basically got new lesions during that time period. Now, it's not a long-term problem as such, because in a randomized study, these patients don't respond to the checkpoints either, unfortunately. So that's why with the progression-free survival, it's dropped from 100 to 80. It does that fairly rapidly because of this cohort of patients, and then it's very stable from there on in. So I think it just reflects a wider range of patients that went into the study, and is probably a better reflection of what we will be dealing with when we try to treat this disease. Now, we've always said that 70% would be impressive. Okay, so no other triple combination or no other combination of these double checkpoints has got beyond 50%. So to suddenly start getting 70% is a big step forward to these patients. So I'm very excited about the 72%. As I said, the 85% was lovely, but I think it was possibly a little bit of patient selection in that first few patients.
Lindy, what's the next steps for the trial? And can you give us an update on SCLP1+?
Yeah, sure. So as I say, the next stage really is we need to complete the study with the full 43 patients. We have 42, as we've said. The last patient is scheduled for immunisation next week. So once they're done, that trial is basically, we'll wait for that 25-week response rate for all those patients too. Okay. Assuming that continues to be good, the next stage is to do a randomized phase 2/3 adapted registration study. Okay, so that will be the pivotal study showing that we really are much better than the double checkpoints and the vaccine has definite benefit. Okay. Now, iSCIB1+, as you mentioned, the reason we quite like iSCIB1+, because at the moment, SCIB1 is about only eligible for 40% of the patients. There is this particular phenotype that works really well with SCIB1. We call it the A2 population, but that's just being technical. And at this point, we have put all the patients into SCIB1, into cohort 1. Okay? When we finish next week, all those patients will now start going to the iSCIB1+ cohort. And as you can imagine, because that's 40% of the population, we really do need to treat some of those patients, A, to see how it compares with SCIB1, but B, to say how big of a population is we can actually treat. So at this point, we have no patients that have gotten to week 25 with iSCIB1+, but that's in the non-A2s, and we don't have any A2s in that population yet. So it's a little bit behind SCIB1, but we still have a lot of enthusiasm that it should be as good, if not better. But that data will take a little bit longer to mature.
Lindy, have there been any updates on Modi-1 and the antibody platform?
Yes, so they're both looking quite nicely as well. I mean, clearly this press release was more about SCIB and are moving with SCIB, but the Modi, we've got some nice stable disease in some very advanced patients in both head and neck and renal, which is good. And also, we're now moving into checkpoints with that vaccine as well, because I think in advanced disease, you probably do need the checkpoints as well as the vaccine. Okay? So in renal, the double checkpoints are very similar to melanoma are indicated. So we really hope that a bit like SCIB1 as a monotherapy in advanced disease gives stable disease, but as soon as we put those double checkpoints, there's this lovely synergy and we're seeing these really good responses. So fingers crossed that's what we're going to see with Modi as well. We've got 7 patients in that study. We need to clearly add a few more to see whether it's really working. And then again, it's a 44 patient cohort. The other cohort is head and neck. And in head and neck, we just use the single checkpoint. And interestingly, we have just passed Simon first stage. We've got 3 responders in that cohort, which is really exciting. Early days still, so only week 9. So with some caution, because as I say, 25 weeks is the real endpoint. But Modi's looking good. So we just need to continue with that. And the antibodies, our own internal program, we've got a really nice T-cell redirecting antibody. Again, jargon, it's a T-cell that stimulates the immune cells, and we are progressing that. But we've also got an exclusive deal with a potential company that they're looking at this antibody, one of our other antibodies, to see which is going to be the best, whether they want to take that forward with their technology. So both programs, all 3 programs are moving forward, but at the moment our main focus is SCIB1.
Lindy, I hope you'll keep us updated on progress on all of those programs. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Scancell Chief Executive and Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Lindy Durrant.